Mi naitwa Patrick Matheka na nimetoka area inaitwa Makueni na ninaishi hapa Olosirkon since from 96. Mimi nikiamka asubuhi kama ni siku kama hii ya leo, si ni Friday, tunakunywa chai kwanza. Tukimaliza kukunywa chai, mimi na watoto yangu, mama kama ako hapa, tunaingia tunaosha hii mifugo yetu juu ya kupe. Tukimaliza kuosha, tunawatoa tunawapeleka msituni kwenda kuwachunga. Kufikia kitu saa 6 tunawapeleka mtoni, wanakunywa maji, wanakuja wana relax. Saa 9 hivi wanatoka wanaenda tena wanakula mpaka 6:30. Tunawarudisha tena. Wanakuja sasa wanalala na sisi tunapumzika.
Naitwa Zingugi, nyumbani ni huko kunaitwa Machoko, lakini na huku ndani sana sana tunakuitanga Mutaro. Asubuhi nikiamka nakamua, napea ng'ombe chakula, alafu natokezea barabarani sababu nitakutana na nyani hapo. Wakienda kutoka saa 2:30 hivi, sasa narudi nyumbani. Nafanya duties za nyumba, alafu sana subiri wakuje saa hizo zingine. Jioni nikimaliza kupika, nalala tu kama lisali moja. Ndivyo nitokezee tena kwa barabara, alafu nigoje saa ndefu.
My name is Sasine and we are in our village and this is our home. We were spraying God outside and now we're starting cooking some breakfast, and then the young boys have to get out from the village and go out in the fields until evening hours, because normally we go from the morning till evening.
Traditionally, many Kenyan communities have interacted with wildlife quite positively. In fact, a lot of their folk stories, the stories they tell their children, their totems, there's an intricate relationship between people and wildlife. For instance, the Maasai believe that the elephant was once a young girl, and they even can tell you what clan this girl belonged to. And what she was doing was this girl was walking to her married home, because the Maasai girls get married very early, but she was so close to her mom. And it's taboo for a young girl to look back at her mother's house. But what she did is, after a short trip away from her mother's manyatta, she turned back and immediately she started to swell up. So she just grew, her ears grew big, her feet, her body. By the time she got to her married home, she was on all fours, turned into an elephant. And so she was not good for marriage. She was sent off to the bush. Now, you could say this is a deterrent for the young girls who want to look back, but it is also showing that the Maasai study the elephant. They live with elephants. They can see that there are many things about elephants that relate to human life. For instance, their social bonds, where how you see that they stay together as families. They look out for each other. They mourn the dead. They are able to see that this animal has so much of what we are, And elephants live for 70 years, much like the age of a human being. So there is an intricate relationship between the people and the wildlife.
Initially, they looked at the wildlife as a resource, but not anymore. Not anymore. That is why you see so much incidences of poaching are coming up, and the communities can see what is happening and they keep quiet. In fact, the communities that I live with, that I work with, to them they would rather get the elephants out of their areas.
Huwa tunatanisha na ndovu, vitu kama nyati, na at times kuna kutanga hizi vitu kama fisi. Kitu kama ndovu zinakuanga sumbufu. Juu huwa wanaanza tukiwa chakula kikiwa tu changa, wanaanza kuja kutoa. Juzi ndovu wakatokezea, wakaingia kwa shamba. Nikaamka nikaenda kuzitoa. Sasa lazima kwanza usikize penye wako, juu wakisikia makelele watu wamenasimama. Nikawa na mbwa. Mbwa alisonga tu karibu naye, alafu saa hiyo kufukuzana kwa mbwa na ndovu, mbwa alikuja tu kwa miguu zangu. Sasa nianze kukimbia. Nikaonelea afadhali nirushie ndovu torch, iache na torch, mimi nitoroke. Wanaweza kula kila kitu. Kaa kwa jirani yangu hapa, hata wamevuna saa hizi. Walivuna ziko tu hivi. Wamevuna juu ya kuharibiwa. Chenye alitoa ni kitu kidogo sana. Ni kweli wakati nilirusha torch, alikuja akavuja torch, lakini hakuona chenye kingine. Sasa nikatokezea. Siku hiyo sikurudi tena kwa shamba.
So how do people then react when this tension how does this tension manifest itself in the communities? A group of poachers moves into that community, while before they would have whistleblown, maybe said, oh no, these are not good people. Now they see them as agents of reducing population, right? So they start to support them, give them a place to hide their trophies after they've been out poaching. So you will actually find, for instance, in the Maasai community, there's a very small percentage of Maasai poachers. The large number will actually be people coming in from the outside. What the Maasai will do is give them information, give them safe passage, give them security so that they can be in the area for long without being traced, right?
Fisi wanatoka huko kwa game. Wanakuja hata kama unalala, anachimba boma upande wa nyuma. Wewe ukiamka asubuhi unakuta mbuzi hakuna. Ukifuata unakuta amekulia tu somewhere. Nitaje kina fisi, kuna siku wamekuja more than 30. Wakakuja, unaona hii uwanja iko pale, hatukulala. Tukiwafukuza. Sisi ni kupika makelele huko, na waende, watoke wasitukulie mambuzi. Huyo ofisi alinikosea. Anatoa mbuzi yangu, alitolea kwa ile kona, akabeba akapeleka kwa msitu pale. Akaenda akakula. Naona? Na tunalala kwa hii nyumba. Anakuja anatoa choo kwa hii kona. Hiyo ni madharau kiasi gani? Dirisho mzuri tujue yeye ndio mbingwa, amekula na amekuja kukunya kwa mlango. Ninakuanga lindo baba. Juu fisi labda amechelewa, amelala kwa kimajani pale. Usikie tu kondoo kama haka kameanza kulia, kumbe hakuna. Kameumwa kichwa. Huku uwezi acha mbuzi silale msituni. Uwezi ukaacha. Hizo mbuzi kama tuseme umepoteza. Juu uwezi acha mbuzi kwa kupenda. Kama umepoteza inakuanga ni 50-50. Either upate ama ukose. Ukikosa, maybe utapata mangosi. Ukipata, unaambia Mungu asante. Kama ingine yangu ilichukuliwa pale, tulifuata manyoya hata hatukuona ngozi. Manyoya tukafuata ikafukishwa barabara. Vile tu alikuwa anafurutwa. Ilikuwa mbuzi mzima kubwa.
All the village, we have around 130 cows. Goats, sheep, they are like 300. And they have the little belts, and then we can just hide them and take them through the bushes. But when we go there, sometimes we just like go behind them so that we can protect them against the wild animals, lions, or hyenas. Yeah, because the leopard and cheetahs, they don't hunt the cows. They normally just hunt sheep and the goats. When I was 10 years old, get out, take cattle out in the bush, and then we find 4 lions. They try to hunt a cow. They grab it and pull it down, and we ran out. It was 2 boys, and then we chased it away, and the lion ran away, and he just injured the cow, but he didn't kill.
We have loss of property, that is livestock. As you know, people from here are predominantly pastoralists, so they have lost quite a number of livestock.
Jina langu ni Metian Motik. Nilikuwa naichunga mbuzi na kondoo. Nilipokuwa nikichunga, simba akaja. Alipokuja, sikuwa nilimuona. Kujaribu kuona, ashaua kondoo moja. Nami kujaribu kufukuza, fisi wakaondokea. Kajaribu kurudi, niliona fisi 3 hivi wakitoroka. Kumbe washaua kondoo na mbuzi mmoja. Na hivyo nikaanza kuitana, kuomba msaada kwa walio karibu.
And then we also have loss of life, and yes, we have had cases where people have been either killed or maimed by wildlife in general, and mostly elephants and buffaloes. They are the big conflict animals.
So I think I have just returned back from heading cattle, just come back to the village, and we have one of the young boys that we went with him, and he just got injured killed by the elephants. He just hooked and put it up and threw it out in the river. So that's why I come before the cattle arrive back to the village.
Depending on what it is that your livelihood is dependent on, if the relationship with wildlife then starts to jeopardize your ability to survive within that economy, to be able to pay school fees for your children, to put food on the table, to cultivate a crop so that you can also be seen in the community as one who knows how to live, then it is not a wonder that sometimes the attitude towards wildlife becomes negative. But it is not a hatred-based attitude. It's just a tension that comes out of that frustration that you do need to live. One looking in from the outside may then say it's a negative attitude or it's a hatred. It's more complicated than that.
Saa zingine wanakuanga wasumbufu, lakini lazima tu ujue kukaanisha na wao juu lazima wakae na lazima we ukae.
The wild animals are also good, they're not bad. They're also good because you can see like the way they react in the nature, it's the way they have been brought. So it's not like something that when we see them like hunting the wild animals, we don't trap them, we just leave them and see, just keep on watching what they're doing. And there's nothing bad.
Mimi kile ninaamini ni kuwa hawa wanyama waliumbwa kama sisi. Na ni kama hawa wanyama yangu. Saizi hii ng'ombe yangu ukifungulia ione nyasi smart, inataka hapo hapo. Ni kwa nini ng'ombe Mungu akiumba haliumba ikulange nyasi? Hakuumbwa akunywe chai kama hiyo tunakunywa. Hakuumbwa kule nyama. Naye wale wanyama wameumbwa wakule nyama.
But in essence, what we have found out is that most of the people here are, are positive about wildlife. They like it because since time immemorial, they have coexisted with them, and they want to continue to do so. The only difference comes in when we talk about issues of benefits, like who benefits from wildlife and who doesn't. So that now tells us, that's where we get now more information of how people feel towards wildlife. So the Mara is actually a big cash cow. I mean, in terms of tourism, there's a lot of tourism that goes on here. But if you look at the spread of the benefits, it's quite skewed. In the sense that now, as you know, we have the Maasai Mara National Reserve and we have conservancies. Now, the conservancies are land that has been given up by the community members. It's actually private land, but they decided to lease it for conservation purposes. So those who have land in the conservancies get a monthly income from the tourism sector, and then we see that those ones are more positive. But also we have people who don't have land in the conservancies. Now the problem is the wildlife that we have around do not recognize the boundaries that this is a conservancy or this is not a conservancy. So what happens, they move to the community land and maybe have cause some problems. And the same people who live out there maybe don't have land in the conservancy. So they are just getting a lot of losses and not any sort of compensation or income from that.
Those communities that live next to wildlife must be supported by our laws and the actions. So for instance, they must be compensated for the losses that they incur. And compensation only works if it is timely and if it really covers the cost that has been incurred. Our law makes provisions for compensation.
This is something that is entrenched in the Wildlife Act. And it was, when the new Wildlife Act was done, the issue of committees came up. It is there, and that is, it deals mostly with if a community person is doing farming and the elephants come in and destroy their crops. There is a process that they are supposed to follow so that they can get the compensation from the national government.
Okay, kuna kuanga na hiyo compensation, lakini huwa tunajaza hata saizi. It's as if tunaona kaa hakuna kitu ambacho kitatokea.
If a pastoralist keeps his livestock and the predators come and eat them up, there is a process that they follow. They fill up some forms and then they are given compensation.
Yeah, I was saying they was going to pay some cows when the lions killed and leopard, and then there's nothing they pay. It's just kind of cheating. They're not helping with anything. It's just the way that what we get from the national park is just grass from the cows.
Mimi sijaiona, sijui.
The main difficulties is that as much as the communities are given, the high hopes of getting compensation, up to date the government has never given any money to compensate those people. So the communities are just complaining.
Hii nimekuambia ni ofisi. Na kila mtu ako area hii tuko. Ako na mifugo kwa boma. Hiyo ndio ofisi yake. Na ndio kioski yake unaweza fungua ukifunga. Sijui kama unanielewa hapo. Unanielewa? Sasa juu mimi sijatuma afisi kutoka game. Yeye mwenyewe amejileta na miguu yake ngapi? 4. Akuja uwe hii kakondo kangu kamoja hata kama ni mtoto. Kenya Wildlife wanafaa wanipatie mbuzi 5 kwa mbuzi moja. Sio siri.
Unfortunately, it has not worked very well in terms of implementation. Okay? So somehow there needs to be a conversation between the NGO community, the local people, to think about this idea of how do we compensate people for the losses that they incur through living close to wildlife. Okay? Now, on the other hand, When people are compensated, then they can also not be allowed to break the law. The wildlife also needs to be protected by law. Okay, so when people are caught poaching, then they need to face the full force of the law.
Solution ni kujengea wanyama mifugo, yani hawa wenye tunaishi na wao, ni kuwajengea. Kujenga tuseme ni kama vile unaona nimeweka mabati kwa hii boma ya ng'ombe na mbuzi. Juu fisi anaongopa kitu inaitwa kelele, atakangi. Hiyo tu ndio itasaidia. Simba hawezi kuja kuguzaguza mabati. Naona solution ni watu wajengee nini? Mifugo. Juu hata tukue namna gani, hata watu wajae iwe ni hii nyumba na hii nyingine, simba atakuja tu na hiyo njia na barabara yenye itakuwa juu wako hapa.
As much as we are doing the electric fences, this is a short-term strategy. We need to have some mid-term strategies, we need to have long-term strategies. And the mid-term and the long-term strategies should start as we do the short-term.
Saizi tunaona ni afadhali vile sasa wamefungia wanyama wakae huko kwao na sisi tukae na huko.
Now that we have the county government, one of the things that I think they should fight to put in place is a clear procedure as to how the revenue is shared in terms of how much goes back into the community. Because the community are living with wildlife and they suffer consequences of that. But if you look at what is trickling down, it's very little.
They should even build a school here for the children. They should be having persons that goes to the Maasai that living around the park. But the way that they are not doing it, it's just the way that you don't have anything to say to them. Because when you get there, you can even sometimes beat them with sticks.
The long-term strategies, I would say, is we identify the wildlife corridors, we move out people from the wildlife corridors, we also do some kind of inventory of how much of elephants we have here, how many do we have, are they sustainable, are they able to feed within what we have. If they are not, then we can move some of them away, relocate them to maybe Mount Kenya or Aberdare forests. And also talk to people to start some kind of income generating activities based on conservation issues, so that we can also try to do conservation as we benefit along the way.
One thing that is clear to me is that unless we can get our people to work and live with wildlife, wildlife has no future.
We need conservation as much as we need development, because a healthy environment is a healthy nation. If we don't balance, nature is going, obviously, as Wangari Maathai used to say, to take charge. Nature is going to revenge. Nature is going to, come after us one way or another. That is definite.
My aspiration for the future is that we are able to make wildlife conservation as beneficial as any other enterprise, such that the community can be more positive and more responsive to the calls for conservation.
We have only 12% of our land area that has been put aside as conservation land, okay? 8% as national parks. The other 4% or maybe slightly more as community conservation areas, game reserves, multi-use areas that have basically been designated as wildlife areas. Now that means out of 100% of Kenya, only 12% is demarcated as wildlife areas. A large percentage of our wildlife lives outside this 12%, is roaming outside the national parks and reserves in community areas. Can you see a Kenya with 70 million people and then elephants walking around? You see, we have a real challenge. So as a nation, we need to ask ourselves whether we want to have wildlife.